So without further ado, I will hand over to you, Chris.
Welcome to the Initiative for Financial Wellbeing. So I'm going to just talk for 20 minutes about what financial wellbeing is all about and what the IFW is all about. Do pop things into chat, and I can questions into chat, and I can answer them perhaps afterwards, because I'm aware a little short time this morning. I am actually talking at that PFS conference in November, so I'll whiz through some of this stuff. And if you want to see it in a bit more detail, come along to my talk in November. I can't see you at the moment, so if you do wave at me or anything, I won't be able to see you. So pop stuff into chat, and I'll look at that when I'm done yakking at you. So financial well-being. You might see, may or may not be able to see behind me subtly, product placement. I wrote a book called The Financial Wellbeing Book about 6 years ago. And at the time when I wrote it, I came up with the title Financial Wellbeing. I Googled that title, and there were 2 entries on that Google search. That was it. I did it again out of interest just the other day, Google Financial Wellbeing, and there were 2.2 million entries on that Google search, which is pretty incredible. So financial well-being for me is, we have a vice chair, some of you may know, a lady called Ruth Sturkey, and she refers to financial well-being as version 3 of financial advice, which I think is a really nice way of putting it. If version 1 was product-based, recommending products, and version 2 was financial planning with cash flow forecasting and what have you, then financial well-being is version 3. And it's the direction of travel for financial advice in the UK, I would suggest. So let me explain why it's so important and what it is, and I'll try and get all that done in the next 18 minutes. So we are hardwired to make bad financial decisions. That's how our brains are wired. Our brains are wired through our DNA, through millennia, to work on fight or flight. We are programmed to work on short-term decisions, on having stuff now, not waiting for stuff. That's just how our brains are wired. If anybody of you have seen the brilliant Neil Page, he has loads of really good stuff on this. So our brains are wired to make short-term decisions. We're not wired to think about our future selves. And as a result of that, we're not wired to make good financial decisions. So there's a lot of behavioral finance that underpins some of this stuff. If you go back to the 1300s, this is a picture of some Italian peasants in 1300, not an easy Google search, I can tell you. But Italian peasants in 1300, the average income, this is from a book called Utopia for Realists by historian Rutger Bregman, who, by the way, his Humankind book is one of the best books I've ever read, really recommend it. So the average income for an Italian farmer in the year 1300 was, roughly speaking, $1,600 a year, the equivalent of $1,600 a year. Now, if you move forward in time past the scientific revolution, the industrial revolution, the Reformation, the invention of the steam engine, etc., to 1900, then the average Italian farmer's wage in 1900 was the equivalent of $1,600 a year. It hadn't changed in all that time. There was no inflation because their time frame was the seasons. We didn't think about 30 years time putting money away for retirement. We didn't need to do that. So we're not hardwired to make financial decisions. It's only been arguably the last 30 years since Thatcher privatized pensions and Maxwell fell off his yacht that we've had to start taking responsibility for our financial future. So we're just not programmed to make these decisions. So what happens is when we make financial decisions, we tend to make them from a position of being stressed, from guessing, because nobody knows what the future is going to bring, and therefore from a position of fear. So when we talk about financial well-being, particularly with financial advisors, we're talking about helping people to use their money to be happier and to make better financial decisions to overcome this stress, this guesswork, and this fear. So I mentioned that I wrote this book, The Financial Wellbeing Book. All the proceeds go to a cancer charity, which is why I feel quite happy to keep suggesting everybody buy copies of it. And we also have done 85 or so episodes of the Financial Wellbeing podcast, going back 6 years or 7 years or so now. So what is well-being? Well, I mentioned that Google search that I did. There was 2 entries on that Google search. One of them was from a book called Wellbeing by Rath and Harter, R-A-T-H. Those of you who like to read this stuff, Rath and Harter. Wellbeing, really, really good book, a summary of all Gallup polls about happiness. And they brought happiness to be into these 5 different areas. And of these 5 areas, financial well-being is the one that doesn't directly add to happiness. The others directly add, and of those, social is the biggest one that adds the most. Financial well-being, money doesn't actually add to happiness. In fact, there's lots of research that shows a thing called Schwartz's circumplex, and a book called Hypercapitalism by Tim Kasser shows that if you are a person who sees money as an objective, you will be less happy than you would otherwise be. If money is your objective, you will be less happy than you would otherwise be. That's a massive statement, because when you think, if you're spending your time with your clients talking about their money, you are talking about something that makes them unhappy. If you're talking about how they use that money to help them to achieve things in life that will make them happy, then you are talking about financial well-being. So if the focus in the meeting is on the money, that's likely to be a negative thing. I'll come back to that. So these are the 4 areas that make up well-being, and 5 areas. And of those 5 areas, let's have a look at financial well-being. These are the 5 areas that make up financial well-being. And if you want the references for all the research for this stuff, then they're in the book. You have to buy the book and put some into Pennybron. So of these 5 areas, then, I would suggest that the top one, a clear path to identifiable objectives, that one kind of is financial planning. The clear path is the cash flow forecasting, and the identifiable objectives is client goals, client objectives, etc. Now, a little word on that. And I would go into this in a lot more detail, but I haven't got much time, so I'm just going to focus on this identifiable objectives thing for a minute. I spoke to a compliance head of compliance company a little while ago, and I suggested to him that if you look at suitability letters in a typical client file, then objectives, the 90% of objectives that you see are some version of your objective is to access our investment proposition to beat inflation. That's not an objective, that's an outcome. He actually disagreed with me. He said from his experience it's more like 100%. I think we need to do a lot better with client objectives myself. Because if you're setting the objective to the outcome of your advice, then you're not really helping the client at all. That's just a sales process. And you're certainly not helping the client to be happier. So what do I think of when I mean identifiable objectives? Well, I actually am not overly keen on that word objective, even though it's my own definition or the research definition. But I think we can drill down on that a little bit. And we can talk instead about achievable intrinsic motivations. Now, what do I mean by that? There are 2 types of motivations. There are internal and external, or intrinsic and extrinsic. An extrinsic motivation is when you do something to please somebody else. So that could be status, acquiring wealth. It could be a deadline. It could be fame. There's lots of to please somebody else. And achieving an extrinsic motivation can increase well-being, but it's only very short term. Or it doesn't increase, like status doesn't increase well-being at all. In fact, it can actually be negative. So extrinsic motivations aren't greatly useful to us in terms of our happiness. However, an intrinsic motivation is something you just do just because you want to. It's hard to explain why. It's just something that drives you. It's purpose and it's meaning. So when you talk to clients about objectives, I would suggest you should be talking about meaning and purpose, not about goals, for example. Goals are really dangerous because they're finite. Once you've achieved a goal, then what happens? And if that goal is to make a purchase of a certain thing, what's the reason behind that purchase? Let's take the classic cliche of the yacht. If somebody wants to set a financial goal to be able to buy a yacht, and that's because their friends have got a yacht and they want to be able to have a yacht in the same harbour as them, that will probably make them unhappy. But if they want to buy a yacht because they absolutely love sailing and it's their passion hobby, great, that will make them happy. So it's what you should be asking these questions, I would suggest, in meetings with clients to get this stuff out. So intrinsic motivations. However, there's a kicker to this, which is that if you Neil Bage's stuff on loss aversion will tell you that if you fail to achieve something, you feel that loss 3.6 times more than you feel the equivalent gain or achievement. So we need to make sure we're helping clients to aim for achievable intrinsic motivations. And that's what should be in your financial planning. It should be helping clients to achieve meaning and purpose. Okay, so I'm just going to skip through a few slides here. Yeah, just a quick word on this. So there's a lot of talk about financial wellbeing. I mentioned about that 2 Google searches. The other entry on the Google search was a report from Barclays, where they used the term financial wellbeing to talk about really what I would call financial resilience. And if you go into the workplace, financial wellbeing is huge. And but unfortunately, I don't think it's very well expressed. MAPS also have financial wellbeing, as do the FCA, but they all use it more in this terms of financial resilience, whereas I use it and the IFW uses it, as I've just been explaining, more about the relationship between money and happiness. And I think the workplace thing is a fad. It will come and go, and we'll still be here talking about money and happiness. Okay, so let's have a very quick talk about the IFW. The reason the IFW exists is that I did a conference a few years ago, which was amazing. And I said at the end of the conference, look, if we set something up, who would want to join? And I did a press release, and we had some 430 people respond and say, yeah, this sounds interesting, we would join that. So I slightly cocked up, actually, because on that press release, I said, who would join my new Institute for Financial Wellbeing? 430 people replied. Then I discovered that you need to get this express permission of the Secretary of State to call your organization an institute. Awkward. So I thought, well, if we call it the initiative, then we can say IFW for a while, and then when we get initiative status, we can just switch it back and no one will notice. Well, actually, this is not something that's public knowledge yet, and I'd appreciate you keeping it to yourselves, but I can tell you that we have just had approval to call ourselves an institute, which is so cool. You've got to jump through a lot of hoops to be able to do that, including doing training. So we have training courses. We have the Financial Wellbeing Certificate, which 45 people have gone through now and has been absolutely transformational. There's an article on our Mighty Networks group from a lady from Paradigm Norton who said it's made her enjoy her job again, which I'm just so proud of. We've got to do research, so we've produced 3 white papers. We've got some more ongoing. So there's we've got a conference, which is, lots of CPD. So there's certain things we had to do, and we managed to do that, and we proved to the Secretary of State that we are worthy of being called an institute. So I'm really, really proud of that, and would love you to get involved in it. So what's the point of the IFW? Well, we want to help make the world a happier place. And we want to do that by helping advisors help their clients to be happier, not just wealthier. We've got a lot of volunteers. This is our current board. I don't know if you may recognize some of those faces. But the board is pro bono, and they put in lots of time. We've got a regional meeting this morning for the Southwest. I'm going to at 10 o'clock. We do lots of work like that. There's a round table event where we just talk about some theory. I love that one. There's no point to it. We just talk theory, which is great. Wellbeing Cafe tends to be a bit more focused about practical tips and ideas. We also are a really good meeting place for the financial coaches, which is non-regulated financial coaching. If any of you know Simon Ganessen's work, very much involved with us as well, and integrating some of their ideas into financial advice. That's through the Coaches Forum. We had a conference a few weeks ago, or 6 weeks or so ago, which was amazing. 110 people or so came in Bristol. And we run different types of training courses. There's a certificate, but there's also coaching skills courses. The one thing that financial advisors, I think the one thing that we don't do enough of is training in listening and questioning skills. So we run training courses for that as well. Or I say we outsource them, but they are through our learning and development section. I mentioned we also do research. We have a big impact in the workplace through Pension Geeks and through Pensions Week. Is it called Pensions Week? Pension Awareness Week in October. We offer consultancy, so we work with businesses to help them to deliver financial well-being. We also have our audit. So if a small firm wants to use our logo on their website and boast that they're members of the IFW, that's fantastic. But we do just want to make sure you are actually delivering financial well-being by helping clients to be happier. I would just make a little point there, by the way. A few people have said, I had a particular discussion on Twitter where people said, well, I do financial well-being, it's a natural outcome of my job. That's not financial well-being. Financial well-being is a whole area of study, as I hope I've just touched on, around taking out psychology, behavioral finance, etc., and applying it to the financial planning process. We've got around 330 members at the moment. We do have a workplace presentation that we can deliver or license to you to deliver. If you're interested in that, get in touch. I talk all the time about this stuff, like now, PFS, CISI, all over the place about this subject. It's a not-for-profit organization. Okay, so this is not about me setting something up I can earn from. This is something that is about spreading the word. We've got fantastic support from our partner members, particularly Aegon have been amazing, but also Parmenion were there from the start too, and we've recently Benchmark Capital has signed up as a Benchmark member too. So I will just kind of wrap up there because we started slightly late and I want to finish on time. So if you're interested, get in touch. My email address is actually just put Chris at the front of that, members, so chris@ifw.org.uk. We would really love you to come on board and start joining some of our events, because the more people we can get, the more of gravitas we'll get, and the more of those partner members will start to join us, and we can really change the direction of travel of financial advice in, well, not just the UK, in the world. If you think, if we can reach 500 members, and those 500 members are likely to be talking to, let's say, 100 each of the wealthier people in the UK, probably 200 with partners, etc. If you can think that we can start to get through to those people about how their money can be used to make them happier, and just accumulating wealth is not going to make them happy, we can make some real societal change in the world. And that is, at the end of the day, our objective. So we would love you to come on and help us to achieve that.